In 2010, a scientist in Siberia found some bones in a cave. He didn't think much of it at first. He thought he'd found some ordinary ancient Neanderthal remains. But the DNA he extracted from those bones told a very extraordinary story. They revealed an entirely new branch on the human family tree, a new extinct human species, the Denisovans. Here are their remarkable story. Denisovans are one of 3 archaic human species we know of. The other 2 are Neanderthals and Homo erectus. We know about them thanks to fossil evidence. And while fossils have helped scientists learn a lot about archaic humans, they don't tell us everything. Fossils can only teach us about the physical characteristics of past species, but DNA reveals so much more. It can show us how gene variants work, whether those variants are beneficial or harmful, and also how different species are related. This is why it was such a shock when the Siberian discovery was made. It turned out that both Neanderthals and Denisovans had split off from our own species, Homo sapiens, earlier than previously assumed. And unlike Homo sapiens, they appear to have been unable to migrate far. Neanderthals stayed in Europe and Western Asia. Denisovans ended up in East Asia. Homo sapiens, however, spread to every corner of the globe. And there's no place on Earth that hasn't been touched by modern humans. But if modern humans are so modern, then why do we have Neanderthal and Denisovan DNA in our own genome? Why don't we have, say, Erectus DNA? Well, that's because the species we now call Homo sapiens arose in Africa and remained there for a long time before beginning to spread elsewhere. As we spread, we did meet other human species, but those encounters didn't always end in violence. Sometimes they ended in family. The Neanderthals, for example, interbred with Homo sapiens as we passed through their lands. In fact, most non-African populations today have around 1 to 4% of their DNA from Neanderthals. That includes me. And in East Asia, people have around 3 to 5% of their DNA from Denisovans. So all humans outside of Africa carry ancient DNA in their blood, in their bones, and in their brains. And that DNA influences who we are. To understand how, we need to understand a little bit more about Neanderthals and Denisovans. Though they're gone, the genetic material they left behind allows us to bring them back to life. Sort of. According to the DNA, Neanderthals and Denisovans weren't actually that different from each other. They were shorter and stockier than Homo sapiens, which may have helped them survive in colder climates. And they had larger brains, but how much bigger? And what does brain size actually tell us about intelligence? These questions are hotly debated among scientists. They're trying to learn as much as they can from the limited fossil record. While they debate, geneticists are using ancient DNA to reconstruct the appearance of archaic humans. A recent study found that Neanderthals probably had brown skin, dark hair, and eyes, and that Denisovans looked similar, though with slightly lighter complexions. And here's another thing that geneticists have learned. Archaic humans didn't look like troglodytes. They weren't covered in fur. They didn't walk on all fours. They were fully human. They probably laughed and cried and dreamed just like us. And chances are they looked pretty much like us, too, except maybe a little hairier. And that means that when they encountered Homo sapiens, they probably wouldn't have looked like strangers. They would have looked familiar. And that makes sense given that we all share around 99% of our DNA. So archaic humans weren't monsters, but they did live in a monster world. Their bodies had to deal with dramatic weather changes and injuries from hunting and fighting, and their minds had to solve problems like shelter, food, clothing, and safety. Basically, they had to contend with the same things we do. And as it turns out, they coped with those challenges in ways that were both similar to and very different from ours. Let's start with our immune system, which is constantly fighting off invaders like bacteria and viruses. Studies of archaic DNA have shown that Neanderthals and Denisovans had genes linked to our immune systems that were different from ours. For example, they had a gene called ERAP2 that came in 2 flavors, one long variant and one short variant. People today have this short variant. Our Neanderthal cousins had the long variant. Scientists have seen that this gene helps coordinate the body's response to viral infections, and they've suggested that archaic humans may have used that coordination to protect themselves against pathogens that we would have no natural defense against. Today, that idea is supported by studies of the immune systems of chimpanzees and bonobos. Those studies show that immune genes can evolve quickly when exposed to new threats, and that they often turn out to be species-specific. In other words, if an immune gene is good for keeping one species healthy, it may not help another species at all of which suggests that archaic humans may have had some serious advantages in the immune department. And it's not just our insides that were shaped by our ancestors. Some of the most famous examples of archaic DNA in action can be found on our. Take the gene for skin color, for example. This gene comes in a few flavors that make our skin darker or lighter. And when scientists compared the gene in archaic humans with the versions we have today, they found that the darker versions were found outside of Africa, which means that people who lived in East Asia more than 100,000 years ago had darker skin than the people who live there today. There's even evidence that archaic humans had thicker, stronger bones, which probably helped them handle the weight of carrying big game during the hunt. and genes associated with breathing and sleep seem to have been transferred from Neanderthals to Homo sapiens, which could mean that Neanderthals were better breathers and sleepers than we are. As for how exactly those genes jump between species, well, that's still a mystery. We don't know if Neanderthals and Homo sapiens mated for love or war or anything in between. And since we can't ask them, scientists are using genetics to try and answer the question. They're looking for signs of positive selection in the genes that survived in our DNA. In other words, they're asking if certain genes gave our ancestors a survival advantage. So far, they haven't found any strong evidence of that, which means it's possible that our Neanderthal and Denisovan DNA isn't beneficial. Maybe it's neutral. Maybe it was just a product of living in close proximity to other species, having kids together, and passing on their DNA. Or maybe it was a product of something else entirely. Some scientists hypothesize that gene transfer between species was driven by conflict, not community. But whatever the reason, the result was profound. Around 40,000 years ago, only Homo sapiens were left in the picture. But today, we all bear the legacy of our ancestors' encounters with other species. That's a quick dip into a vast subject. To get a deeper understanding of human evolution, check out the links in the description. It's amazing to think about how much we have in common with other primates. Even our emotions are very similar. Our earliest ancestors left Africa about 200,000 years ago, and for hundreds of thousands of years before that, Africa was the only place where modern humans lived. So, if your ancestors left Africa at some point, it probably hasn't been long enough for us to evolve in a way that reflects life on this new continent. That is, until now. Welcome to my channel. For all of human history, we have looked up at the stars and wondered, are we alone? We have gazed into the abyss and seen nothing but darkness. Yet recent evidence suggests that we may be more alone than we thought. For you are not who you think you are. You carry within you the legacy of others who once walked this earth. And their story has only just begun to be uncovered. It's me and you're watching this channel. Have you ever stood outside and felt the wind on your skin or shivered when the temperature dropped? You can thank your Neanderthal side for that. The cold never bothered them anyway. They had a genetic variant that produces more brown fat. This special kind of body fat helps us maintain body temperature, and was thought to have given Neanderthals an edge in surviving ice ages. You also owe your amazing sense of smell to them. Compared to us, they had more olfactory receptor genes and a much larger olfactory bulb in the brain. These guys could smell things we can barely detect. In fact, scientists have found that the gene variant that gave us our exceptional sense of smell actually came from interbreeding with Neanderthals. When we talk about Neanderthals, we're talking about a distinct species of archaic humans, Homo neanderthals. They arose in Europe and parts of Asia at least 400,000 years ago. During the last ice age, they spread across the continent, living as far east as Siberia and as far west as Spain. They were stockier than modern humans, shorter but stronger, perfectly adapted for the cold. Their brains were larger, too, but despite their physical prowess, they went extinct 40,000 years ago, just before the end of the last ice age. And while they lived in Europe and parts of Asia, the exact areas where our ancestors first encountered them are a mystery. Modern humans also had a gene that made them better at coping with low oxygen levels, which may have helped them survive the journey out of Africa. In fact, these genes are thought to have originated in bacteria, and Denisovans, like Neanderthals, were another group of archaic humans who lived during the Pleistocene epoch. But unlike Neanderthals, who are thought to have descended from an older species called Homo habilis, we don't know what the Denisovan lineage split off from. Scientists have collected so little genetic material from Denisovans that we don't even know for sure if they belonged to the genus Homo. Maybe they were their own thing. Compared to Neanderthals, we know much less about Denisovans. The first Denisovan fossils were discovered in Siberia in 2010, with additional remains found in China's Tibetan plateau. They lived in Asia until at least 30,000 years ago, perhaps much longer. Like Neanderthals, Denisovans had more brown fat, suggesting they were well adapted to cold climates. But they also seem to have thrived in warmer regions. For example, one genetic variant seems to have conferred immunity to malaria. We don't know when or why Neanderthals and Denisovans split from our direct ancestors, but we do know that our ancestors encountered both groups when they left Africa. Because today, if you have ancestors from anywhere other than Africa, you likely have Neanderthal DNA in your blood. On average, people in Europe have 1.5 to 2% Neanderthal DNA, while East Asians have 4 to 6%. Some people have as much as 7%. That's because when our ancestors met these ancient humans, they didn't just fight them, they mated with them. Scientists have estimated that people in what is now China interbred with Denisovans multiple times, perhaps every few hundred years over thousands of years. Neanderthal-human hybrids were once thought to have been confined to Europe and Western Asia. But a 2021 study revealed a previously unknown population of Neanderthals in Siberia. These Siberian Neanderthals interbred with Denisovans and our ancestors, leaving their genetic legacy in people from Australia to Papua New Guinea. To date, there's no evidence that people outside of Africa interbred with any other hominin species. So why did they mate with these ancient humans? Anthropologist Andrea Manica thinks it might have been love. In his book, The Neanderthal Man, he writes, Love knows no boundaries, not even species boundaries. He adds that it's possible that it wasn't just sex, but genuine romantic love that drew these ancient humans together. Of course, this is speculation. But as Manish says, how can you say that one day we find the fossil evidence for an ancient human who chose to fall in love with a member of a different species, and the very next day we say that's completely impossible? Love or not, these encounters produced children who went on to have children of their own. These hybrid populations weren't exactly melting pots. The Neanderthals and Denisovans weren't exactly the same as each other, nor were they the same as modern humans. Each had its own unique traits and culture. At some point, researchers hoped to uncover what, for example, Denisovan children looked like. Were they more like Neanderthals or modern humans? What language did they speak? What tools did they use? What stories did they tell around the fire? Perhaps some of their DNA could hold clues to these mysteries. By studying our ancient relatives, we learn more about ourselves. In fact, there's evidence that Neanderthal and Denisovan genes might play a role in everything from our immune system to sleep disorders to diabetes, cancer, and depression. One study even suggests that they played a role in the development of the COVID-19 pandemic. There's a lot that scientists still don't understand about these archaic humans. We know very little about their cultures, technology, and daily lives. It's easy to see them as backwards compared to modern humans, but they had their own strengths. A 2018 study suggested that they had the ability to adapt quickly to change. Researchers studied proteins in Denisovan bones and found that their bodies could quickly produce new proteins in response to environmental stress. Our ancestors, by contrast, seemed less able to cope. If Neanderthals and Denisovans had the ability to adapt so quickly, maybe they would still be here today. And yet, 10,000 years ago they vanished. What happened? Anthropologists have various theories. They suggest that Neanderthals and Denisovans went extinct because they couldn't compete with modern humans. Compared to our ancestors, they had smaller brains, lived in smaller groups, used older tools, and lacked the ability to speak as. Some anthropologists even believe that Neanderthals and Denisovans were purposely wiped out by our ancestors. But new research suggests that there's more to the story. In 2022, a team of scientists reported that 12,000 years ago, a group of modern humans and Denisovans were living in what is now Siberia. This is significant because the oldest known Denisovan fossils in the region are 20,000 years old and the youngest are 12,000. The team proposed that their study participant, dubbed the X-woman, died around 14,000 years ago. She was half Denisovan and half modern human. Her mother was a Denisovan woman and her father was a mysterious third lineage of archaic humans. This discovery raises two questions. Why were there so few Denisovan fossils in Siberia from the middle 8,000 years? And did the ex-woman's mysterious father come from a separate archaic lineage? Or was he just a regular old Homo sapiens? If the latter, it would mean that interbreeding between Denisovans and our ancestors continued after everyone else thought it had stopped. All this brings us back to the question posed at the beginning of this episode. Are we alone? As we learned in this episode, Neanderthals and Denisovans were once neighbors of ours. They hunted the same animals, gathered the same plants, and stared up at the same stars. They might have even sat around the same campfires and told each other stories. They certainly passed by each other on the street. And yes, they slept in the same beds. Perhaps they laughed at the same jokes. They clearly had much more in common than they did differences. If you have ancestors from anywhere outside of Africa, then you're carrying around a piece of them inside you right now. Every time you sneeze, you have them to thank. Every time you take a deep breath of fresh air, think of them. Every time you fall in love, remember that love knows no boundaries. They are you and you are them. We are all alone together. So what should we talk about next? Please let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for new episodes every week. In the heart of Arizona's painted desert, hidden among the red sandstone buttes and the mazes that glow like embers at sunset, lies a secret whispered only to the wind, a secret etched not in stone, but in bone. You're standing where ancient stories sleep, where the silence hums with untold tales. This dry, sun-baked land holds more than it seems. Beneath these layers of earth and time, there's a narrative that stretches back, challenging everything you thought you knew about where you come from. And this story reveals a deeper truth. Survival was never about purity. Evolution doesn't reward isolation. It favors those who adapt, who mix, who learn, and who transform. The journey begins in the shadow of a giant, a skeleton so colossal it seems to mock your own small frame. The bones of this giant tell a tale of a past that predates even the oldest pyramids. This is the legacy of the mammoth, an echo of a species that once roamed these very lands. And your story becomes intertwined with theirs, not just as a visitor, but as a descendant. Because this story is not just about the past. It's about you. It's about where you come from, where you're going, and what it means to be human. You run your fingers along the weathered stone of a cliff dwelling, half expecting the spirits of ancient Pueblo people to materialize from the shadows of its many rooms. As you do, you become a conduit between then and now. Your touch transmits messages across the chasm of time, echoing stories of lives lived, loved, and lost right here. These dwellings, once vibrant with life, whisper tales of families who found solace within their protective embrace. In these silent chambers, you hear the echoes of laughter, the murmur of daily life, and the quiet rustle of stories waiting to be told. Imagine the faces of these ancients. What did they look like? Did they have high cheekbones and dark skin like you? Were their eyes pools of wisdom reflecting starlight like yours? Or were they freckled and fair, their hair the color of wheat under a relentless sun? Did they look like you or someone completely different? Some say the first Americans arrived on foot across the Bering Strait land bridge, following herds of animals and the promise of new beginnings. Others claim they've sailed across the Pacific, navigating by the stars and riding the currents of the ocean. Regardless of how they arrived, their descendants would leave behind a legacy carved in stone and bone. But these weren't the only stories playing out on the continent. Farther south, another narrative was unfolding, one that challenged everything you thought you knew about human origins. Deep in the heart of Mexico's Valley of the Spiders, archaeologists made a discovery that shattered conventional time. They unearthed a skull that seemed to defy the very essence of human evolution. The skull was small, delicate, almost otherworldly in its appearance. It couldn't fit onto the bones of any known species, pushing back the boundaries of human understanding. Who were these ancient ones whose bones lie scattered across the American landscape? Were they the enigmatic mound builders, credited with constructing earthen pyramids long before the Aztecs? Or are they the creators of the Great Serpent, a mythical beast that slithered through ancient myths and legends? These aren't just ordinary tools. They're windows into a bygone era, each point whispering tales of hunts under skies filled with woolly mammoths. As you gaze at these artifacts, think about the hands that crafted them. Whose hands were these? How did they shape these weapons of the hunt? And what skills did they possess to survive in a world ruled by ice and giants? These points are more than just tools. They're the legacy of a people perfectly adapted to a vanishing world. Their creation and eventual disappearance mirror the fate of the megafauna. They hunted, showcasing the delicate balance between predator and prey. The legacy of the Folsom culture resonates through the ages, serving as a reminder of the challenges faced by early Americans as they navigated a world of constant change and extinction. Imagine yourself as a member of this ancient tribe, watching the world transform around you. What did you do when the bison herds dwindled and the woolly mammoths fell? What adaptations did you make to survive the shifting seasons and changing landscapes? Stepping into the world of the Folsom culture isn't just about exploring the past. It's about understanding the forces that shaped the very course of human history. As you stand amidst the remnants of these ancient fires, picture the flickering flames casting dancing shadows on the faces of your ancestors. Imagine their voices carrying stories of the hunt, of woolly mammoths, and the clash of cultures. These Native American ancestors weren't just survivors, they were storytellers, artists, and thinkers. They had languages, religions, and beliefs that guided their every step. They created art that spoke to the wonders and struggles of their world, and they passed down their knowledge and traditions through generations, ensuring their culture thrived despite the challenges they faced. What stories did they tell around these very fires? What songs did they sing to welcome the dawn or ward off the darkness? How did their beliefs shape their daily lives and decisions? As you ponder these questions, remember that you're touching the very essence of human resilience and cultural richness. The survival of Native American cultures wasn't merely about enduring. It was about creating, innovating, and thriving. It was about finding beauty and meaning in a world that constantly shifted and changed. And as you sit by this replica fire, let the warmth envelop you, not just physically, but metaphorically as well. Let it warm the corners of your heart, reminding you of the strength, creativity, and wisdom of your Native American ancestors. Their legacy lives on in you, and it's a testament to the indomitable spirit of humanity. In the shadows of the ancient Pueblo and cliff dwellings, something stirs, a whisper from the past that echoes through the ages. You sense it in the stillness, a presence that's both ancient and eternal. It's the spirit of place, the soul of the land itself. It's a reminder that you're not just a visitor here, but a part of a continuous narrative that stretches back millennia. This spirit is woven into the fabric of the cliffs, the canyons, and the mesas that surround you. It's in the rustling leaves and the murmuring streams, in the soaring hawks and the scurrying lizards. Everywhere you look and listen, you feel the heartbeat of the earth, the pulse of life that has always been here. As you explore these sacred spaces, remember that you're walking on paths that have been trodden by countless generations before you. Your footsteps echo the rhythm of their lives, their hopes and dreams, their struggles and triumphs. In a way, you're completing a circle that began countless years ago. You're returning home to a place that has always been a part of you, even if you didn't know it. It's in these moments of quiet reflection that the true essence of this place unfolds. It's not just about the ancient ruins or the whispers of the past. It's about the connection you feel to everything around you. The land, the sky, the very essence of existence. This feeling isn't confined to any particular religion or belief system. It's a universal human experience, a recognition of our place in the grand tapestry of life. It's a reminder that we're not separate from nature, but a part of it. As you continue your journey, let this feeling guide you. Let it deepen your appreciation for the natural world and the legacy of the ancient ones. Embrace the spirit of place and let it enrich your understanding of who you are and where you belong. Remember, you're not just a tourist here. You're a traveler in both time and space, exploring the depths of human history and the boundless wonders of the natural world. So go forth, dear traveler, and let your journey begin. Now, more than ever, we need to hear these stories, the narratives that define our shared humanity. Stories like the one you just experienced. They remind us that we are all connected, that our fates are intertwined, and that our destinies are shared. It's a powerful message that transcends time and place, reminding us of the beauty and complexity of the human experience. So keep listening to these stories, sharing them and living them. For in doing so, you're not just entertaining yourself, you're nourishing your soul, connecting with others and honoring the rich tapestry of human existence. Remember, every story has the power to transport us, to teach us, and to unite us. And the more we immerse ourselves in them, the more we understand the profound truth that we are all part of the same story, the story of humanity.